We're on page 101 in section 88. We did already 86, 87. This is perhaps one of the foundations of our religion. Amar Kuzari. Says the Kuzari the king. Mi sheshomea divrechem. Whoever will hear your words. Ki ha'Elohim diberim hamonechem. That your God spoke to the masses. V'katav lehem luchot. And wrote for them tablets. V'zulat zeh and other such things. Hadin imo shiaches alechem dat hagshama. The person who sees you or hears you will conclude that you believe in a physical God. Ever seen pictures of the Vatican? Famous painting of God touching Adam.
Oh, Michelangelo.
On the Sistine Chapel.
There you go. On the top. This picture is what happens when someone reads the Torah and says, oh, God must have a body. It took you out of Egypt with a mighty hand. All kinds of things. God appeared in front of Abraham. All kinds of words that we use that sound physical. You who are trained in rabbinic Judaism know otherwise. But the Kuzari is saying, listen, I'm sitting here as an observer, an outside observer, and it seems to me that you believe in a physical God. In a God made out of material. V'gam atem, and also you, en ashimchem. I can't blame you that you believe in a physical God, even though it's not logical for me to believe that God is physical. Why should we not blame the Jews? Ki en midche lama'amadot hagdolim ha'ele. There's no way to push off the things which you say you saw with your own eyes. V'yesh ladun etchem l'zchut, and we should judge you favorably. Ba'ashlachat ha'akasha v'ayim nesichlim. It would be correct for you to get rid of the path of the philosophers because you've arrived at religion through actually seeing it, through experiencing it, whereas they have arrived to religion through proofs and analysis and intellect and logic. Meaning what the Kuzari is saying to the rabbi is, you believe in a physical God. And you believe in things that I think are very hard to imagine in my head. But how can I tell you that you didn't see what you said you saw? How can I tell you the tradition you have in your hands, that you saw God, that you heard God, that He had a hand, that He had a mighty arm, whatever it is that you say you saw? How can I tell you otherwise? As he says, your belief goes against logic. All these miracles, all these... But hey, your logic was superseded by experience. You experienced something that may not have been logical. To which, and let's do Pshat first. To which the rabbi responds, you're not allowed to leave, God forbid, off on a note of heresy, so that's why I'm doing this now. Amar Chaver, the rabbi says, Chalila la'el min ha-sheker. God forbid you should say such lies about God. V'shiavo b'torah ma she'asechel marchik oto v'yisimeu shaker. God forbid that you could say that we believe in something that is not logical. Please underline the sentence. The sentence must be hung up in every Jewish school of thought in the world. The Torah will not tell us something that logic dictates to be false. The first of the 10 Commandments is to believe in God. והשני, האזהרה מעבוד דברים אחרים ומעשה פסל ותמונה ותבנית וכל של דבר מהגשים. We're kept away. The first was to believe in God, and the second thing is don't have any gods of stone. I mean, you're not allowed to have a physical God. Let's deal with the first sentence. The rabbi is saying, God forbid that you should say such a lie, that the Torah wants us to believe in a physical God. What would you, if you were the king, what would you respond back to that?
Well, it sure sounds like it.
Sure sounds like it, right? You're telling me I'm a liar, but you're the one who's not interpreting your religion properly. Your religion seems to be talking, to the best of my knowledge, about a very physical God. And perhaps here's the space to suggest that Rabbi Yonatan Halevy is right. Normally, we mistakenly translate emunah, faith, as belief in something that goes against my logic. That's the definition of faith. It's not possible, really, so I have faith that it will be that way. Rabbi Yonatan Halevy is pushing this. It's not even an option to believe such a thing. He says you're not allowed to believe in something that goes against your logic. We're not being asked to believe in something that goes against logic. So how do we really believe in these miracles that go against logic? How do we believe in such a thing truly? And so perhaps here's the place to suggest that we're not being asked to believe in things that go against logic. Emunah is not a belief that goes against logic, but a belief that goes against nature. In our mind, logic equals nature. Natural. It's a natural way of the world. It's the logical way the world works. Those are not the same thing, though. Natural and logical are two completely different things. The world has an order to it. And the miracle says that we're changing the order of the world to be something else. But never are we defying logic. Logic cannot be broken. Logic is something that's it's a fact. When your logic understands something, it's a fact. Nature has all kinds of rules. And the rules of nature are not always the same. Physics itself. Physics has an interesting thing. Normally when something becomes dense, it sinks inside of water. The denser an object is, it sinks. Ice is denser than water. Why does ice float? Something to do with it. Physics has all kinds of answers: density, water, surface. Our rabbis told us the reason why ice floats is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into nature. Imagine that a lake freezes over. The top layer of a lake freezes. And imagine that ice would now sink to the bottom. All the fish, all the plants, all the animals, everything would die. Everything would die. But instead, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into nature that the ice floats. That way, the winter passes, and we don't know such things in San Diego, but the winter passes, the ice melts, and all the fish are still alive. They've been kept warm underneath that ice. They're okay. Things are okay. Hashem made nature, but He also made the exceptions to nature. That is what a miracle is. So belief in miracles doesn't mean getting rid of my intellect, getting rid of my logic. The other way around just means knowing that nature doesn't work the way I would like nature to work. They say that a miracle is not just natural, it's supernatural. That's what nature is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into nature. But your logic is unbreakable. But until then, let's go back to the question that Kuzari asked. The story of HaShamayim, the Hebrew philosophical word for this. I don't know the word to say. Physicalizing a God. Is there a word for that?
Anthropomorphizing.
Anthropomorphizing. Very good.
Yeah, it's hard to pronounce.
Isn't it here?
Anthropomorphism.
Wonderful. Just say HaShamayim. So HaShamayim is from the word Gashmiut, from the word physical. Is not a Jewish belief. But when you look at the Torah, the Kuzari says, you see God writes, God speaks, God appears, God is angry, God is doing all kinds of very physical things. Havdil, by the way, the philosophers, they believe in a physical God, almost like a human being. Look at the Greeks. This God went and slept with that God, who had children from this God, who flies in a chariot to that God.
This God had a son.
He said, I can understand why the Jews don't believe. That was the Greeks, Mechila. The Greeks believed in a God who was physical. The philosophers, remember, they didn't really believe in a God in the first place. He was a very simple, kind of faraway, distant God. He says, I can finally understand why you guys don't believe in the God of the philosophers, because you've experienced God differently. I get it, but on the other hand, you believe in things that go against your intellect. And you should know there are many Jews that tell you, Shomei Torah mitzvot. It's not just a problem that people look out. There are people inside of our religion.
Turn down the volume.
Is there a monitor in here?
No, that's it.
Do you mind turning it off? Hanan must have brought it here.
Oh yes, I saw him walking with you.
That's normally supposed to be in our room. Did you hear it somewhere? Just press the power button. It's the greatest thing. When Hanan cries at night, I can just lower the volume. See what technology can do for you?
Yeah, they can hear crystal clear.
And really, there are many Jews who believe in this idea that we are demanded in our religion to believe in things that go against our logic. They go against what we know to be fact in the world. And there's a growing group of this. There are simple Jews, led by simple leaders, who are not aware of the depth, the beauty, the intricacy, the sophistication inside of Torah, inside of the writings of our rabbis. For example, there's a famous Gemara in Masechet Bechorot. You'll find many such Gemarot in Masechet Pesachim as well. It says in there that there was a big chicken in the Gemara that laid an egg, and the egg cracked. And the yolk of the egg drowned 60 cities and broke down 300 cedar trees. I remember learning this Gemara when I was young. Wow, see, the Gemara says with a bird, it's kind of like you're reading Harry Potter or something, right? It's like a huge animal shows up and it's laying eggs that can wipe out the whole world, and who knows. And there are people, you should know, that will tell you that must be that's what happened. Must be that when our rabbi said that, they knew something that you and I don't know. It's been a big fight. It's an old fight. The Kola guys, I once spoke to them about it, maybe a year ago, about there's a big fight in the Jewish community. And they've turned this into a rationalist versus mystical Jewish fight, but it's not true. It's not a real fight. People like to fight when there are no fights. But essentially the Rambam is the master of the opposite side of this camp. I was once speaking to somebody, and they said that they struggle with the way I teach halakha. So then why? They said because it makes sense. I've never been critiqued like that in my life. I said, what do you mean? I was taught that halakha is not supposed to make sense. There are just rules that you must follow.
Oh.
What do we become, Jews all of a sudden? We have rules we don't understand, but we have to follow them? What kind of... Are we the people who know what's going on in the world, or are we the ones that are just blindly following things? But it cannot be that we have entire generations of Jews that believe in this.
People are saying that everything is really a hope, and ultimately that we do it because Hashem said we do it, whether we really understand or we don't. But there are different types of that.
But it's still a mistake. I mean, you're right. At the end of the day, we do everything in the Torah because Hashem wants us to. But that doesn't mean that I cannot understand what goes on. Harav Peretz was once arguing with a rabbi. Harav Peretz said, why don't you learn Chumash more than you do? I don't learn Chumash because I don't believe I will ever be able to understand it. And imagine the guy's a rabbi. Harav Peretz said, what do you mean you won't be able to understand Chumash? He says, Chumash is such a deep book that nobody in the world will ever truly understand it. So Harav Peretz almost threw him down the stairs of the building. Because you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu would give us a book we can't understand? Are there things in the Torah that are deeper than the whole? Of course. But there are things in the Torah we do understand. What do you think? Hashem just gave us a Torah, we're supposed to look at it, put it on a shelf, kiss it, but we can't understand it? Yeah, fool. But there are such people. I want to share with you a gem. This is a gem from Jewish history that nobody wants to study because it's dangerous to study such things. You hear about people studying the Rambam.
Yeah.
They love the Rambam. The Rambam said this, the Rambam said that, but they don't quote the parts of the Rambam they don't like. Like when the Rambam doesn't agree with you, and the Rambam has books of philosophy, and the Rambam has books of emunah, of belief in Hashem, and the Rambam has books on commentaries on the Mishnah. The Rambam has a lot to share that we don't want to hear. So I want to share with you an introduction of the Rambam to Perek HaChelek. Perek HaChelek is part of Tractate Sanhedrin. If you know the 13 principles of Jewish faith, the Rambam writes those 13 principles at the end of this chapter. I mean, this is the chapter of Talmud that talks about everything Jews do and don't believe in. It's a very deep chapter. In most yeshivot, when they study Tractate Sanhedrin, they just skip this chapter, which always blew my mind. Why would you skip it? It's too hard to understand. Yeah, but isn't the point of yeshiva? Wouldn't you rather focus on the things that are hard to understand? That's what you have to know, the foundations of our religion.
Is this part that's discussing the 13 principles of faith? Is that what it is?
It's not just that. It's about Mashiach, about heretics, about believers, about the next world, about all kinds of things. It's called Perek HaChelek. You actually know a Mishnah from there. Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelek l'olam haba. All the Jews have a portion of the world to come. Where's that from? Not from Pirkei Avot. It's from Sanhedrin. We only say it in Pirkei Avot for all kinds of reasons, but it's copied and pasted from Sanhedrin into Pirkei Avot in the beginning of every
I
chapter.
didn't copy all of it.
No, it's just the first snippet, right? It's just the first snippet. It continues. Chutz me, all these people who are not going to have a portion of the world to come.
No, because when you said this is the first part, it says, okay, I can do it.
Is that right? You can do whatever you want. There's a continuation there. The Rambam has a little bit of an insight into the people who study the words of our rabbis. They study the Talmud, they study the stories of the Talmud. And the Rambam, it's a classic. This piece is the kind of Rambam that I remember the first time I read this, I banged my fist on the table. Ariel, my brother, was at the table, said, I love being Jewish. The first time I read this piece. And he looked at me like, are you okay? You're alright? Something's okay? I read it to him. I don't think he found it as exciting as I did, but I hope to share it to you with the same enthusiasm as I had when I learned it the first time. A lot of Hebrew, but listen to the Rambam's language. וממה שאתה צריך לדעת. The Rambam writes his books very often in a conversation kind of style. He's speaking to somebody. So what you need to know is כדברי חכמים זכרם לברכה, the words of our sages of blessed memory, נחלקו בם בני אדם לשלושה כיתות. The people who understand them are split up into three groups. Harishona. This is the first group. והוא רוב מה שראיתי, and these are most of the people that I see, ואשר ראיתי חיבוריו ומה ששמעתי עליו, and I've seen them write books and all kinds of things. הם מאמינים אותם על פשטם. They believe in the words of our sages as they are written. Today I had somebody call me up. I no longer have strings attached. I'm able to say whatever I wish. Someone called me up today. There's a man in his office who told him that he doesn't keep kosher because he doesn't keep Chalav Yisrael. And he said, look, it says in the Shulchan Aruch that you have to keep Chalav Yisrael. That's what this man said. And so he called me up, and I wasn't interested in having a fight, but I told the person who called me, I said, I'm asking you to say the following. The art of learning Jewish text is that everything is in context, everything means something. You don't just read and translate and assume you understood what you got. I said, and it's a big chutzpah. I said, I was once arguing with a Christian missionary. The Havdil Elef of Hevdot, 1,000 differences between that and the story of him. And I told him, you have so much chutzpah to come to us about our book in our language and tell us how we're supposed to understand it. Who are you? Who are you? So let me tell you the following. The Shulchan Aruch is our book for all intents and purposes. It's written by our rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Karo. We're Sfaradim. You all learn it, but he's our rabbi. Imagine me going to Breslov and saying, hey guys, I understand Rabbi Nachman better than you do. You're crazy. Now maybe you do, but you don't. It's not the way it works. They are students of his. They must know what he meant when he said certain things. There's a famous rabbi now that got in big trouble. He said very bad things about Breslov. about Rabbi Nachman. And there was a rabbi from Israel who my wife was very close with, a Breslov rabbi, who flew out to meet this rabbi and sat with him. And for 3 hours, explained to him everything that you quoted, you misquoted. Everything you read and you thought you understood, you didn't understand because you don't understand Breslov philosophy. That you might disagree with it, but you don't understand it to disagree with it. And at the end, he concluded, he said, Rabbi so-and-so, my conclusion is, you are an Am Haaretz. You are an ignoramus. That was his conclusion. You can't read something that doesn't belong to you and purport to know it better than those who it does belong to. We have a Shulchan Aruch, and we don't keep Chalav Yisrael. In many Sephardic countries, we had such a thing. And so for you to come and tell me, you could tell me that your rabbi said, or that another rabbi said, but don't come and tell me with no chutzpah whatsoever that you know how to read our book better than we do. It's a mistake. The Rambam is he's a student of who? He's from the Rishonim. That means he studied by the Rishonim, who studied by the Geonim, who studied by the Savoyim, who were students of the Amoraim. He's part of the generation not so far after the Talmud. The Rambam viewed the words of these rabbis as if they were his rabbis. And he very much took offense by people who misunderstood Chazal's writings. You see, that people read things superficially. They think they read and translate and they understood what they read. They don't think there's any deeper meaning in any way. There's all kinds of things that are not supposed to be, they believe that are real. He says they only do this because they are very far away from any kind of wisdom. And they are extremely distant from any kind of understanding. They don't have any kind of completion. So they're able to understand on their own. They don't have anyone who's able to awaken them. They believe that the way we understood the rabbis, that's the way the rabbis must have meant what they wrote. And that it's a simple understanding. And even though they find sometimes the words of our rabbis that sound terrible, or they sound like they're very far from your logic, if you would tell some of the things in our Talmud to ignoramuses, let alone to intelligent people, they would get very flustered. והם אומרים, האח ייתכן שיהיה בעולם אדם שיחשוב בזהו שיאמין שהוא אמונה נכונה? קל וחומר שידע בלב. These people would say, how could you find me a person who would actually believe in this nonsense? And what do these people accomplish? They make our rabbis look like fools. Says the Rambam, v'zo hakat, this group, aniyeh hadat, they're poor in their minds. Yesh litzte'er alehem l'sichlutam, you should pity them because of their stupidity. They think that they're respecting their rabbis, but in essence they're degrading them more than anybody else could. They don't even begin to understand this. The Lubavitch Rebbe once told his Hasidim not to talk about a certain issue. He said, you think you're being zealous for Hasidut, but in essence what you're doing is you're making the world hate Hasidim. And they didn't listen to him. And he said this many, many times, Lubavitch Rebbe said, that you think you're doing something good, but really you're doing something damaging. But a wise person knows how to understand that. And these people, they think that they're loyal to our rabbis in the Talmud, but they make them look like primitive fools from the old days. V'chai Hashem Yitbarach, he said, and I swear in Hashem's name, ki akat hazeh, that this group, Ma'abdim hadrat Torah, they destroy the beauty of the Torah. U'ma'afinim zahora u'mesimim Torat Hashem behefech ha'mechuvan ba, and they extinguish the light of the Torah and they interpret it the opposite way that it should be interpreted. It says the Kuzari, our Torah tells us, "Asher yishma'un et kol hachukim ele ve'amru rak am chacham ve'navon hagadol hazeh." So this nation is a nation of chacham, navon. They're wise, they're smart, they're intellectual. Hashem told us this Torah is for wise, smart people. If it doesn't make sense by the wise, smart people, how could it be the Torah? It says, "V'akat hazot," when this nation, this group of people tells our Torah, they teach it publicly, "Misaprim mishpatei divrei hachachamim," they tell the words of our sages, "Zechonam levracha, ma she'ashomim oto, Shaar ha'omot omrim," the rest of the nations of the world, they hear our Torah, "Rak am sachal v'naval hagoy ha'katan hazeh." They understand the other way. Not what a great, intellectual, smart nation this is, rather what a small, stupid, unintelligent nation these people are. There are many Jews, they purport to be our spokespeople. And they're teaching Torah all over the world. And they're doing damage to Judaism. And they're teaching Torah, the Rambam says, they're just saying what it says. But they're not telling the truth. And then the Rambam doesn't stop. He says the problem with the Rambam. He got his books burned for a reason. The Rambam wasn't politically correct. That was his problem. Or not a problem. It was the greatest thing about him. But he wasn't an American rabbi in the 21st century. The Rambam says, "Verov ma she'osim zeh," who are most of the people who do this? Hadarshanim. The public speakers. Shehen mefarshim u'modi'in lahamon ha'am ma she'inam yodim. Their job is to go and tell the people what they don't know. Umi yiten achar shelo yadu v'lo hivinu shiyu shotkin. Kmo she'amar Yov. Okay. או שיהיו אומרים אין אנחנו מבינים כוונת החכמים בזה המאמר ולא איך יתפרש, אבל הם מחשבים שהם מבינים אותו ומשתדלים להודיעו לפרש לעם מה שהבינו הם עצמם כפי דעתם החלושה, לא מה שאמרו החכמים. So these people, they're too embarrassed to say we didn't understand this piece of Talmud. There was a halakha in the beginning of Kola, we were learning together, that if you do X, Y, and Z or you don't do X, Y, and Z, you can go insane. I told the Kosa, I don't understand this halakha. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not going to understand it in a simple fashion. I'm going to say, listen, there are some things that I don't know. It's not the end of the world. So, but these people, their whole job is to tell people what they don't know. So if they don't know things, they look bad. And so these rabbis go around and teach us Torah. Says the Rambam, V'akat hashniya. Who's the second group? If this is the first group, you can imagine who the second group is? Hem rabim gamken. There are a lot of them. Says the Rambam. V'hem otam שראו דברי החכמים ושמעום, והבינו אותם כפי פשוטו, וחשבו שלא כיוונו חכמים בו זולתי מה שמורה עליו פשט הדבר. They realized the same thing. This is what our rabbi said. This must be what they meant. והם באים לסכל אותם ולגנותם ומוצאים דיבה על מה שאין בו דיבה, וילעגו על דברי חכמים. They come and they say, oh, look how stupid these rabbis are. They start to mock the words of our Chachamim. They must have been primitive, they don't really understand the world, they don't understand the way things work, they don't... Meaning they're like the first group. They both believe that what our rabbis wrote is what they meant. There's no depth, there's what it means. It's black and white on paper. The first group says that we believe in them so much that we'll, even the illogical things we believe in them. This second group says, no, if they're illogical, then not only do we not believe in them, we're going to make fun of them and show how silly they are. There are entire websites and blogs and YouTube channels dedicated to making Chachmei Talmud, the rabbis of the Talmud, look like fools. V'sichlam yoter zach mihem. They believe that their minds are much sharper than those of the rabbis in the Talmud. V'shehem aleim hashalom niftim gruei hasechel. They believe the rabbis then were like silly people who didn't have intellect. They believe that our rabbis just didn't really understand anything. They were cute. The cute people in the times where Jews were in biblical Israel, they didn't see them to be as anybody special. Says the Rambam, these people are stupider than the first camp. והרבה מהם פתאיות, והיא כת ארורה, it's a cursed camp. לפי שהם משיבים על אנשים גדולים ונשיאים, אשר נתברה חוכמתם לחכמים. They are going against people who the wisest people in the world respect. ואלו הפתאים, and these silly people, אילו היה עמלם בחוכמות עד שהיו יודעים האח ראוי לסדר ולכתוב הדברים בחוכמת האלוהות, והדומה להם מן הדברים אצל ההמון אצל החכמים, אז היו מבינים את החכמים. אם לא, והיה מתבאר להם עניין דבריהם, if they would only have used their intellect to keep learning, to keep understanding, to discover Hashem, they would have understood everything that a rabbi said. And here's my favorite part. In steps the Rambam and tells us about the third group. The third group.
Oh, very good. Here, what maybe they're the ones that understood it.
Ah, nobody knows.
Listen to this, Barry. Vakat Ashlishit. If I would write this, V'hem chai Hashem ma'atim ad me'od. Said, and I promise you in the name of Hashem that they are a very small group. Ad she'en raui likodam kat. He said, you really shouldn't call them a group. Ela kmo she'amer l'Hashem min v'rak hi chidam. Just like you call the sun in Hebrew a species, it's a kind of species called the sun, but there's only one of them. What's he saying right now? How many people are there like this?
Tiny little group.
It's not even enough people to call it a group.
2 or less.
והם אותם בני אדם, those are those people שהתברר אצלם גאולת חכמים זכרם לברכה. וטוב שכלם, theirs are people who have figured out how wise our sages were. ממה שנמצא בכלל דבריהם מורים עניינים אמיתיים למאוד, they found inside of their writings very deep, truthful things. ואף על פי שהם מעטים ומפוזרים במקומות מחיבוריהם, and even though there are very few of them, and they're scattered all over the place, even in their writings, הם מורים על שלמותם, וכי הם השיגו האמת. These are the people who reach the truth. And they understood that some of the things that our rabbis wrote, יש לו נגלה ונסתר, they have a revealed side and a hidden side. וכי הם בכל מה שאומרים על הדברים הנמניים דיבור בהם בדרך חידה ומשל, כי זה החכמים הגדולים. They spoke very often in riddles and in sayings and in all kinds of stories, not exactly because they were stupid or they didn't really understand things, but quite the contrary. The way of the wise is to speak in hints. You know, there are many rabbis. Vori, do you mind moving the speaker away?
Yeah.
There are many rabbis, when you have a chance, there are many rabbis who they would write letters to each other. And in those letters, they wouldn't actually say anything. They didn't want people to understand. They would say, go look in the page of the Talmud, page 24, and that would be the letter. You should understand if you're wise enough to understand. There's a story I want to share with you from you. And then you'll understand the Rambam. Let me finish. I'll read through the rest of the Rambam. V'imata ha'ma'ayen, says the Rambam, note of warning. If you, the reader. Thank you. I think on page Mem Bet, there's a story. Mem Chet, Mem Bet, it's going to be about a lady in Baghdad. V'imata ha'ma'ayen, if you, the one who are reading this book, me'echat ha'shtei kitot harishonot, you are from close. Mem Zayin. Oh, I know it was in the 40s. If you are from one of these two camps, the first two, לא תשגיח בדבריי, ולא בשום דבר מזה העניין. So stop reading here. Don't read the rest of my books, says the Rambam. שלא יהיה נאות לך שום דבר ממנו. You will not enjoy anything from my books. אבל יזיקך, it will hurt you, ותשנאהו, and you will hate my book. ואך יעטו המאכילים הקלים המעטים מחמותם הישרים באיכותם לאדם שרי במאכלים הרעים. He said, how can I feed you the delicacies of a fine connoisseur to somebody who's used to eating junk food? Because you guys are used to eating junk food, so don't bother reading my book.
They didn't read. They burned it right away.
They burned it right away. אבל באמת הם מזיקים לו והוא שונא אותם. So sometimes that food, it can hurt you. It'll make you have an upset stomach and then you'll hate that food. הלא ידעת מה אמרו האנשים שהיו רגילים לאכול בצלים ושומים והדגים? Remember in the desert the Jews said ונפשנו קצה בלחם הקלקל. They got things that were better than what they had and they hated it in the desert because they were used to living at a low level. This is a you from the first two camps. You who understand the words of our rabbi simply and you believe in everything they say. And those of you who understand what they say simply and you don't believe in anything they say, both of you stop reading my book. It will not do you well. But if you're from the third group, says the Rambam, if you see something in the writings of our rabbis that your logic says it's wrong, stop, pause, think about it, ponder it. You must know that it's a rhyme or a riddle or an allegory. Don't move until you understand it. It should wear you down. My parents used to tell us, he used to learn something, and he would say, I have a problem with what's written here. He would say, I have a problem with what's written here. And then he would say, if you can go to sleep tonight, something's wrong with you. If you're not able to just, if this doesn't ruin your day, that you didn't understand this, then something's wrong. So, emet, you see something, you gotta know the truth. I have many things in books that I've learned. I know I don't understand it. And it hurts me because I would love to understand it. I cannot wrap my head, either it's wrong, I cannot wrap my head around the fact and believe that it's true. So I just leave it as a question mark in my head. That's what it is. I don't have to answer all the questions. But it should at least, you should care enough to try to think about it. Just 2 nights ago in Kola, we had an Ashkenazi custom that came up. And I sat here and I was trying to justify 3 different ways I came out of justification to justify the custom. Maran says it's wrong. But you can't sit here and everything's wrong. You can't be that way. You have to at least try to understand it. I don't believe in it, but I want to understand where it's coming from. It's a must. You have to, as an intellectual person, don't come from the first 2 camps. Come from the third camp. These were great people who wrote the things that they wrote. Yes, could they make mistakes? Of course. But at least give them the credit that there was a reason why they said this thing. It could be a reason you disagree with, but at least it was a reason. Says the Rambam, try to find the truth. And it says, then you should look into my book. And this book will help you out very much. The Rambam is saying, stay away. If you're from the 2 camps of people who are used to junk Torah, don't study my book. It's too good for you. And you're from the people who really need it, this book is going to help you out. And the Rambam hinted before. So there are very few people who learn like this as the Rambam. Because there are many, he mentioned a few times the books, they're scattered. It's true. You know, when I go through my library, so I want to look up a book here. It's not the right book to look something up with. Because on this issue, it's not going to be, it's not the truth. You have to know. There are certain places very far and few in between. You find the truth. I was reading a letter now from one of the tzaddikim. You hear what he has to say. He said, this is a man who was not afraid of anybody. Anybody. Nobody scared him. He said something, it seems like it goes against every tradition in the book, but he's right. What do you want to do if he's right? The truth. We value the truth more than everything else. It says the Kuzari. We imagine you Jews believe in things that are not logical. What can I say? You have rabbis that run around teaching things that are not logical. Says the Rambam. Says the Kuzari. You have to know the Kuzari and the Rambam, we told you already in the beginning, are 2 different books. They don't believe in the same Jewish philosophy. But if they both agree that Jews can't believe in things that go against your intellect, then you better stop believing in things that go against your logic. Remember, logic and nature are not the same thing. The Kuzari said that we do believe in things that go against nature because Hashem controls nature, but not against things that go against our logic. Our logic is pure. The Chazon Ish writes in one of his letters. The Chazon Ish says, "Ki hasechel the intellect, the mind, hu hamalach, he is the messenger, ben hayotzer, between the creator, the ben hayitzu, and that which was created. The only connection that we have to Hashem is through our mind. Our mind is the connection between us and God. I'm not taking away from the heart and the soul. But our mind, our straight intellect. Hashem is straight, we must be that same way. You want to ask something?
I thought I heard you say that so many of the writers don't really deal with the truth. You didn't really say that, did you?
That's not what I said. What I said is, very often you won't find people from this third camp. It's a rare thing to find.
All the stuff that you
I'm not saying anything about the tzaddikim in that. There are
Language is
groups.
very general.
Clearly the Rambam,
No, I think to clarify what you said is when a specific topic is being brought up. So there's one book that deals with it perfectly in truth, and there's another sefer that can be great in other areas, but not in this. And you have to be able to know how to search. Every book has truth. It also has things that, Peretz has a pen he sits with and he edits things out from Sver. So it's not true. Now he's a great rabbi, so he could do that, right? But you have to know which books are really true and which ones are giving you a lot of background, a lot of different nice things. But when you're looking to really solve the issue, you go to the one encyclopedia.
So you're saying that some of these great Chachamim who wrote beautiful books, they could write things that maybe weren't exactly on target or they weren't exactly right.
and they're not there for them. Not maliciously.
Right. So you're saying that they also could have interpreted things incorrectly.
Everyone can interpret things correctly.
Okay.
Which is why we have to know who to study, how to learn. That people read all kinds of books today. Any book that's printed, people read it. It's a dangerous thing. Not every book is worth your time and investment and entering your mind. I once asked my parents a question on a commentary on the Torah. This commentary says X, Y, Z. I said, why are you learning that commentary? I said, Rabbi, it's a classic. I said, don't read it. I said, you didn't finish the other ones in order to start reading this one. He's not accurate, says all that. Is that a crazy thing to say? It doesn't fit into politically correct American Jewry. But that's why we're not American Jews. We're Jews that come from our Holy Land, not from here. We live here, but we don't come from here. I want to share with you a story so this doesn't stay theoretical. You'll understand a little bit of what I'm saying, and with that we'll end for today. The story is brought down by the Ben Ish Chai. I know we're over time, it's okay? A few minutes. This story, when I first read it, blew my mind. I could not believe that this story was written in Baghdad. The Ben Ish Chai tells a story about a wealthy man in Baghdad. He was the chief rabbi of Baghdad. And he had a daughter. And he did not want his daughter to be an ignoramus. So he hired a young rabbi to learn with his daughter how to read Hebrew, how to pray from the Siddur, how to do certain mitzvot, a little bit of Chumash and the prophets, things that she needs to know to be a good Jewish girl. He paid this rabbi a lot of money. And this rabbi learned with the daughter, he realized his daughter is a very brilliant lady. A young lady, but she's brilliant. And they finished in half the time that he was paid. They finished Chumash, they finished the prophets, they finished the writings, they finished the Siddur, they finished everything they need to know. And she said, I don't want to stop learning. Teach me what's next. I said, okay, let's start learning Mishnah and Talmud together. Baghdad. I'm not talking here about, California. He starts teaching her Talmud, Pilpul, Svara, back and forth, Rashi, Tosfot, Rambam, Moy, Fran, Halachot. 2 years passed. That was the time that he had paid for this man to teach his daughter. And he came to check in. What's going on with the learning? How's everything doing? What are you guys up to? And he found them studying Talmud together. And this man started laughing. He said, what are you, fool? You're trying to teach my daughter to become a man? What are you trying to do with her? He said, get out of my house. He threw him out of the front door. Baghdad. And that's what happened. And the girl begged her father, said, no, you're going to get married, you need to have a home. Don't need to learn this nonsense, not for you, this is for men to study. My grandmother, Allah Shalom, my father's mother, her father was a rabbi. He used to have a cheder, it was a mori. He had a cheder in Yemen, and it wasn't acceptable for girls to learn certain things, but in Yemen it was illegal to teach, like in Afghanistan, or this is a different world. And so she always wanted to study from her father, had to read and write, Chumash, Tanakh, Halakha. He couldn't teach her. So she was a little girl. She would hide in the closet in the cheder. My grandmother came to Israel. She was 15 years old, married. She knew Tanakh by heart. And she didn't know how to read or write. Any pasuk. You told her a pasuk started, she would end it. I remember we used to read, my grandfather, Shnai Mikav V'Chatavim. He would read the parasha twice with Unkulus, the commentary afterwards. And so we would sit at the table. It was like a table like this, and there was a kitchen. And the Kehillat behind her, and she would be frying schnitzel for Shabbat or whatever she was making. And she would correct us. She would correct it. Yeah.
Oh,
She taught herself how to learn. When people had questions, they came to her. On Shabbat, she used to have in her house, ladies didn't go to Beit Knesset, at a house she would teach them, she would read and sing songs with them, read Chumash with them, things like that. At 55 years old, her last kid moved out of the house. And so she signed up for Ulpan. And she taught herself how to read and write. And she was already my grandmother by then, so that was when I got to meet her. And my grandmother would always be holding a book, and she would say, Arurat Teman. She would always curse. Curse that is Yemen. That didn't teach us how to read or write. She would touch the letters like this. She would say, I used to know these words, but I was not able to read them from a page. So this girl, she already knew so many things. And her father didn't let her, so she used to hide outside of the window. Her father was a wealthy man who used to learn Torah with another rabbi, and she would just learn by a window. She would hide over here on the floor, and she would listen to them learn. And she never told him that she was listening, but that's how she continued learning. So now I want to share with you the story. The story is that a man comes from Israel. It's called a Shliach D'Rabbanan. What's a Shliach D'Rabbanan?
Shadal. He
Yeah.
came to collect funds.
What we call today a Meshulach.
Oh.
A Meshulach, it's a guy who comes to collect money. Oh, very good, a Shadal, that's how we write it in Hebrew. He came to collect money. Or it seemed like. So I want to read you just this piece and we're done for the night. After many years she was learning like that. She was eating lunch with her father and she heard a knock on the door. When they came to open the door, there was a man who came in and the wealthy father said, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is Chaim ben Shalom." That's my name. He said, "From what city are you?" So he told him, "Me'ir Moladcha, from the town where you're born." He said, "How is so-and-so who lives in that city?" And so they were sitting at the table and there was a bowl with fruit. And he told him, the guest said, "Look behind the pomegranates." Like the rabbis speak in riddles, right? So the man looked behind the pomegranates and he saw there was a bowl of fruits. And he realized that the word for passing away, tapcha, he passed away. His soul passed away. It's like the word tapuach for an apple. So he realized it must mean that the man passed away. So the wealthy man said, "Oh, well, now that you're here and you're from my town and you know that this man passed away, I'm sorry for the news. How can I help you?" And he told him, I'm a poor man and I don't even have a penny to my name. But if you can please help me out and give me a little bit of money so I can live just for today. So the man calls his daughter. He says, "My daughter, go to my coat. My coat is hanging in the room. And there's 2 dinars in my coat. 2 coins. One is gold and one is silver. Go and take the silver coin and give it to our guest and tell him that he could go on his way." So she goes to the room. She looks in the pocket and she purposely takes out the gold coin, which is worth much more. And she gives it to the poor man and he leaves. After an hour, the father got his coat and he was ready to leave the house. And he realized he only has a silver coin. He's very angry. He calls in his daughter. He says, "What happened? I told you only take the silver coin. Why did you give him a gold coin? This is more money than he deserves." She says, "My father, I did it on purpose and I have a reason." So what's your reason? How could you decide to use my money for something that you didn't understand who this man was? You must have thought he was a simple poor person going to your house. So what do you mean? He was a simple, that's what he was. He was a simple poor person who came to my house. I said, "Father, let me tell you exactly. He was a Torah scholar who really needed the money." I said, "Torah scholar? He wasn't a Torah scholar. He didn't say anything smart, nothing intelligent." "Father, it's because you don't know." So when you asked him, "What is your name?" he said, Chaim ben Shalom. I am Chaim, the son of Shalom. He said, what he meant to say is, my name is Chacham Chaim, Rabbi Chaim, the son of Shalom. Chacham is in Gematria the same thing as Chaim. 2 yuds together become a Chaf. So he was saying, my name is Chacham, but you don't introduce yourself as Rabbi so-and-so. He was trying to tell you he's a rabbi, and if you would have thought for a second, who has a name Chaim Chaim? Nobody has such a name. So it must be one of the Chaims was redundant. So I put two and two together, and I realized that Chaim means he's Chacham Chaim, he was a rabbi. And he was only humble, so he told you that. So who would name their son Chaim Chaim? And he fulfilled the words of our rabbis, that your mouth should never praise yourself. Someone else should praise you. And then he asked him, what city he came? I came from your city. And you thought he came from Batzara, from Bavel, where you were born. And then he asked him, so how is so-and-so? He said, but he didn't mean that. He doesn't come from your city. You asked him, where is he from? He said, Me'ir Moladcha. What is Me'ir Moladcha? The Torah is called your moledet, your heritage. The word, your hometown, could also mean your heritage. He said, I'm from a city of many great Torah scholars. He was trying to hint to you again that he's a Torah scholar, but he didn't want to praise himself. And then he said, look behind the pomegranates. And you looked and you saw that behind the pomegranates there were apples. And you thought that the man passed away. That's not what he was telling you. He was telling you, Shir HaShirim, it says Harimonim. Henetzu Harimonim. The next verse after Harimonim is Lo Yadati. I don't know. That you asked him, how is the guy from my town? He didn't want to tell you, I don't know. He told you, look after the pomegranates. After the pomegranates is the verse Lo Yadati. I didn't know. I don't know who you're talking about.
Too much already. I understand.
And the man said, I don't believe you. Crazy stories. Your girl, see that rabbi messed up your head. And he sends his servant out to the marketplace to go find this man. And he comes back. And the man comes and says, what's your name? I told you already, Chaim Chaim. Are you really a rabbi? I said, yes, my name is Chacham Chaim. I said, where are you from? I said, I come from a town with many Torah scholars. He said, why'd you tell me you come from where I came from? He said, I meant to say that I come from a town of Torah scholars, Moledet. So what about the man that I asked you about? He told me he passed away. I didn't tell you anything. So I told you that look after the pomegranates. You saw the apples. You understood what you wanted to understand. I meant look after the pomegranates. Over there it says, I don't know. That's the next verse over there. And the man turns to his daughter and says, how could it be that I've learned for so long? I've learned for so long. And you knew more than I did? I'm much older than you. And she told him, Father, I've been learning behind your door, behind your window, for many, many years now. And our rabbis tell us that Halomed B'tzida, the one who studies Torah privately, Machim, he becomes wiser. He says, you are a famous man, everybody knows you learn Torah, you support Torah scholars, so you're inevitably not going to know so much. But I have been hiding outside of your window. And so I'm learning Torah, I don't get any reward aside from the fact that I'm hiding and learning Torah. And because of that, he brought her back the rabbi and she learned Torah and she became a very big Torah scholar. And perhaps there's the first time you find in a place like Baghdad a lady who held her weight in Torah and Talmud and Shulchan Aruch. This book is mentioned, and the story is mentioned in the book Od Yosef Chaim, written by Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. It's in there, Parshat Truma. Chacham Ovadia brings down the story in his commentary on Pirkei Avot. I want to know, just last, I already told you last, Rabbi Yosef Mashash has a story. He gave a drasha once about ladies studying Torah. And I have the words, but it's not worth taking it out now. Rabbi Yosef Mashash said that there was a lady in a certain town that she just wanted to learn Torah. She didn't even want to get married. Just wanted to learn Torah. She said, if Ben Azai, a man, is able to study and never get married, so can I. And her parents cried. They brought the rabbi. The rabbi said, listen, you can't. You have to get married. Torah, it's for men. And that night the rabbi went home and he had a dream. And the dream was that there were warriors that came to attack the town. And everybody was being killed. And this lady came out and she stood up and she was shining like a Torah scholar. And everyone who saw her from the enemy armies, they died on the spot. And the rabbi wasn't sure what to do with the dream. But it turned out that afterwards, there was a plague of locusts that came to the town. It was going to eat all the crops of the people. And the plague came and the wind blew them out of the town. And the rabbi understood through his Ruach HaKodesh that it was in her merit of her learning Torah that the town was saved. And they made her the Torah scholar in the town. She was the Talmidah Chachama. So not everything in the world is black and white. Not everything has to be far away from our mind. What the Rambam is telling you, there are few people who understand. This little girl, who would have understood from that story? You would think this man is crazy. His parents were nuts. They named him Chaim Chaim. And he couldn't answer a question straight. Everything was a hint. We read the words of our rabbis. If this is a story of some girl in Baghdad 100 years ago. Imagine Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Meir Bar Anes, Hillel, Shammai, Abaye, Rava, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Eliyahu Navi. You know how many times he's mentioned? Elijah the prophet. They have all kinds of tzaddikim that are mentioned. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the author of the Mishnah. When they say a word, can you not imagine how much depth it has? Says the Rambam, stop being so foolish and understand that every word of our rabbis, if it doesn't make sense, so think about it and try to find the way that it makes sense. But never believe something that doesn't make sense, and don't knock our rabbis for saying something that doesn't make sense, because something is just, we don't understand it. And that's the best way to say. If you don't understand something, say probably the Rambam knew something that I don't know. We'll keep moving forward. B'ezrat Hashem, that should always be our approach to Chachamim. Emunat Chachamim, believe in our sages.